That's so annoying. And when looking at this cheap scan tool, you can see that the code that's brought up is both P0420 and P0430, which is just a catalytic converter code for the left and right bank, since this is a dual exhaust. Or I suppose rather I should say that it's a V8 engine, so therefore it has two banks of cylinders, so of course it has a dual exhaust. But this is really annoying when you know that the engine is running perfectly fine, especially if you're monitoring it with a handheld tuning device like I do, or whatever. Still, you're getting a check engine light over something incredibly small like this. It's just a really nice feeling to not have any lights on the dash. So today, my goal is to show you how you can do so on the cheap with these specific codes. And I know there may be some of you who are thinking, I don't really care if there's a check engine light on my dash, but one really important reason why you might want to take care of that and get it cleared is because something small like a catalytic converter code, which these are not even necessarily indicative of complete catalytic converter failure. There's a lot of reasons why these codes could come up, which we'll talk about in a second. But these are really minor codes that should not be that big of a deal. And when they're permanently illuminated, you know, you don't have a second check engine light that pops up for another problem that could be more serious. So if you're having something happen, which I would hope you would notice anyway without the check engine light needing to be illuminated, like a misfire or something along those lines, some sort of parameter the engine is measuring that it is deciding is not good and it needs to illuminate the check engine light for whatever reason, those are things you just aren't going to see unless you're checking it regularly when the check engine light is always illuminated because of something small. And the reason why you'll see the check engine light illuminated for this particular code is because there's really tight tolerances because of the EPA standards with the catalytic converter codes such as these. So for instance, I believe it is like a 90 or 95% efficiency threshold. So if your catalytic converter is still working 89% as good as it should be, or even 94% as good as it should be, or whatever, you might still get that code popping up. So a catalytic converter literally just falling under its efficiency where it should be is a reason why you can get this code. But another really obvious reason is if you have an exhaust that doesn't have catalytic converters, or if you have high flow cats. Those do not eliminate nearly as many pollutants as stock cats. That's why they're typically still not necessarily road legal, and they're still advertised for off-road use only. So in my case, I have long tube headers and it has a high flow cat H-pipe in it. On the previous tune, when I bought the car from whatever tuner it was, the rear O2 sensors, which are the downstream sensors, were, I assume, just turned off in the tuning software because I never had any code that popped up. But when I changed a couple things on the car and got a tune from Bama, they do not mess with any of the emissions equipment, which makes a lot of sense. So they will not turn those off for you. They won't eliminate that light. So suddenly, that light was illuminated. But there is a really easy way to fix this in a lot of cases. You're only going to need a couple things from your local parts store. Pretty much any of them should have it, and I'll go ahead and show you guys what you can do to make this light go away. But with that being said, one nice thing that comes from this light being illuminated on my particular car is the exhaust system, which sounds great, and it's been a long time since I've done a cold start, so we're gonna do a cold start, especially because here in northwestern Illinois, it was literally like 92 degrees a week ago, and today, as I'm filming, is Friday, October 5th, and it is literally in the 40s right now. It's supposed to hit like 58 today. I don't know if that's gonna happen. It's just cold and rainy, so I'm looking extra millennial right now. That's right, I drink IPAs now, and I think that liking the Beatles makes me unique. Anyway, we're gonna start the car. It's definitely the best sounding car that I've ever have personally owned. And it's kind of funny because it's not that loud in general driving, but cold starts are by far the loudest thing that it does with the headers, and it's good. I like it. Okay, it is quite a while later, and I have returned with these, which are spark plug non-foulers. Now, what these are typically used for is exactly what they sound like. It is basically, you put a spark plug in here, and it adds an additional gap, and therefore will help spark plugs not to get fouled. I don't know if I would actually ever use these for their intended purpose, and to be fair, I don't think that these ever were really necessarily intended to be a permanent fix, but if you get these, being the 18mm variety, they are the same diameter as, if I'm not mistaken, the vast majority of O2 sensors. And I also got these drill bits from Harbor Freight, if you can see those. Just a titanium set of drill bits because I did not have the drill bit size that I needed, and buying a set of just cheaper titanium drill bits like these was less expensive than just buying the bit by itself. So what we have here that we're going to need is a 1/2-inch drill bit to go ahead and drill this out, and we're gonna need to step up to that 1/2-inch drill bit with a lot of smaller bits as well. And what we're going to do is, you can see these have a small hole, if we can get that to focus, yeah. They have a small hole on the outside there. So we're gonna end up threading 2 of these together, but we're going to open up the hole on the inside one, basically to the diameter of the other side here where the threads are, or as close to it as possible, to give the O2 sensor space to go in to this all the way, and then we'll add this one onto the end. And the reason we're doing this is twofold. When we're extending the O2 sensor out like this, what we're doing is, first of all, adding additional space away from where the exhaust gases are, which will help the reading ever so slightly, because not as many of those essentially fumes or contaminants that it's trying to pick up on. I'm using all the wrong words right now, but essentially it should read that it is slightly more efficient. And what will also help with that is leaving that small hole. If we leave that small hole on the outside there too, less air is going to pass through this in general, which should also help the O2 sensors to read better accordingly. Because the downstream O2 sensors are pretty much there just to read the efficiency of the catalytic converters. If there's an actual air fuel problem, the upstream O2 sensors will go ahead and give us a code for that, and we're not going to be doing anything to change those. So let's go ahead and do the modification of these to get them to work. But first things first, before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and jack the car up, and because the car is super low, I get to do the sketchy jacking one side up, then jacking the other side up to get it high enough that I can crawl under it and get the O2 sensors out. I don't necessarily recommend that, but that's what we're gonna have to do. Okay, the Mustang is up in the air, and another thing to note, of course everyone should know this, but always give the car a good shake. Make sure that it's sturdy, and that definitely feels very sturdy. So we should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the O2 sensors off underneath the Mustang. Okay, now we're gonna start stepping up drill bit sizes to get this drilled out to the proper size. And you may notice my beautiful outfit, which is helping to keep me from getting dirty. And I am not ashamed of the practicality of what I'm wearing, dumb as it might be. And I'm gonna use a little bit of WD-40 as lubricant for this to hopefully make it go a little easier. All right, I got this first one all drilled out, and I just got the O2 sensor threaded in there all the way as well. As you can see on the end there, the sensor is all the way through. So we're gonna go ahead and put this under the car and get to drilling out the other one the rest of the way. So down here under the car, we went ahead and put the spark plug non-foulers that are not drilled out in here, so you can see the kind of reduced diameter there at the end. And then the other non-foulers will just thread right into these. Because of the length of the O2 sensors, the actual sensor portion at the end here, these cannot go straight through here. So be really gentle with this. As you can see, that touches before it can actually even begin threading in. So that's why we have to drill out those additional non-foulers. You can just put the non-fouler that is drilled out in by itself, but you will not have very much air restriction, which we're trying to restrict the air a little bit, hence the smaller diameter hole on the unmodified non-foulers, and also the additional space of having a secondary one into these should also help with that code, and hopefully change the readings on these sensors here so that our codes stay away. So it looks like in our case we're not going to quite have enough space for both of these. When I had looked at this before, I think I just kind of misjudged the angle a little bit, and I thought that these weren't gonna cross over each other quite that directly. I thought they'd be more at an angle kind of like this from each other. So we should be able to run one of these and we'll see how that does. And then at some point I'll probably get an angle pipe or something like that that does a 90 or a 45 degree that's the same diameter. Or another option is they do sell 90 degree O2 spacers specifically on different websites and stuff like that. Like you can get them at like MA Performance in different places. So that is an option. That would work better here, especially having the sensor angle and basically be sitting more like here instead of the direction it's pointed right now. But this is okay. We'll definitely get this sorted out, and what we'll probably do is I'm gonna leave the 2 on this one and see if we get a code from that, and I'm gonna just do the 1 on this side and see if we get a code on this side. So hopefully I'll be able to report back later on and see when or if we get a code on either of them, and then we'll see the effectiveness of this, of having the single and having both of them on this side. I definitely think this one will work. This one, with it being just like this, I'm not sure. It might not. It depends on how much these high flow cats are actually doing, which I suspect is probably not a lot, but we will see. All right, well, we got everything all tightened up and secured under here. A couple things just zip tied to that trans mount to keep all the wires up there, because they do have extensions since they are long tube headers, so they're a decent amount further back on the vehicle than they would be normally. And these two, they are still very, very tight. I don't love how close those wires are to each other, but there shouldn't be any flex between here and there, so they should be all right. In the future, I will probably move this one over with one of those 90 degrees like I had said, just to prevent this, because if this does get hot, because you know it will get a little bit hot since it's connected up to the exhaust, I'd prefer this not be touching. So this was my solution for hopefully shielding this sensor a little bit against that heat. I just cut a little strip in a piece of vacuum line and just zip tied it on here. Like I said, this is not a permanent solution. This is probably going to stress those wires a little bit more than I would like to. In the future, I'm definitely going to do something about this, but in the meantime, I'm definitely curious to see how this works. So let's go ahead and close this video out. So let's go ahead and just recap what we did so that there's no confusion that's left over with anything in this video. So what we did was we took 2 of these per side. This is a spark plug non-fouler. This is an 18 millimeter. And we went ahead and drilled this side out. So this narrow side out here, the light is just reflecting on that. This narrow side with that tiny little opening right there, we went ahead and drilled this side out to a 1/2 inch in diameter. So that was so that the oxygen sensor could actually fit into this the rest of the way, because without drilling that out, the oxygen sensor won't actually thread into this. But if you drill that out to where it can basically poke almost all the way to the end of this, it will go ahead and thread right into these perfectly fine. If it's like most oxygen sensors, certainly basically any Ford vehicle should have the same size oxygen sensor. And I mean, I've never researched this, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe the vast majority of vehicles have fairly standard sized oxygen sensors, so this should work for basically any vehicle. And then we took a secondary one of these unmodified with that small little hole on that side, not drilled out, on the one side. We would have done it on both sides if we have room, but if your vehicle only has one oxygen sensor because it only has one exhaust pipe, or basically one row of cylinders, so if you have an inline 4 like my wife's Focus back there or something like that, you probably won't run into that clearance problem in the same way that we did, but we have those two sensors right next to each other. So I will probably just be doing a 90-degree one of these in the future, but we're gonna go ahead and see how these work. And before we take the car down, it's still about, I don't know, 2 feet up in the air. So we're gonna go ahead and clear the codes and start this up before we do anything else. Now, there's really no reason why what we did should have thrown off anything to do with the car. Everything should be perfectly fine, but it's always a good idea to double check everything before you go ahead and break down all of the setup that you've done on the car. So let's go ahead and clear those codes with our code scanner, and then we are going to start up the Mustang, make sure everything's good, and I will report back in a future video about how well this is doing. I certainly think the left-hand bank, the driver's side bank of the engine should be fine. I would be very surprised if that brought up a code again. The passenger side with only that one spark plug non-fouler, I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be enough space, but we will see, and I will update this in the future. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and start it up and see how everything works. So we got our handy dandy code scanner from Walmart here. You can also do this with a handheld tuning device most of the time, which I do have, but I normally use this because for regular codes, this actually normally works better. So we'll go ahead and erase those codes. So that should be done and good. Okay, now let's go ahead and see if that goes away. Looks like we've got no check engine light, which makes sense because we just cleared it. So we'll go ahead and take out our scan tool. Like I had said before, the real test will really be how this performs over the course of the next several weeks or months to see if those codes come back. But I think we have a very good chance of them not doing so. So I'm very excited about that. Now, one last thing that's probably a good idea is to go ahead and spray the oxygen sensors where they are with soapy water like this to go ahead and see if they're leaking. I don't think mine are. I'm not very concerned about it. It doesn't sound like there's any leaks coming from down in that area. So I'm not gonna worry about this. I will go ahead and check them again later on to make sure that everything has stayed tight, which, like I've said before on this channel, is a good idea to do regardless of what the project is. I love this Daytona Low Pro jack. It's absolutely great, but you do have to have the precision of a neurological surgeon to get it to go down as slowly as you would like sometimes. I don't know, maybe it just needs like thicker oil in it or something like that to help with that ever so slightly, but it's definitely very sensitive. Once you get used to it, it's not a big deal, but it's really easy to accidentally drop a car way quicker than you mean to. Alright, well, thank you very much for watching this video. I very much appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by. I apologize that there's no specific end result in this video. I'm trying to get this video out as soon as I possibly can, but stick around in the coming weeks and I promise that I will provide an update video on this, probably on a Wednesday, and I'm pretty confident that we're not going to have any issues, at least definitely on the one bank. And like I had said before, in certain scenarios, just the one non-fouler is probably enough, especially if your car still has factory cats and they're just starting to not be as efficient as the threshold that they're supposed to match. Just that one spacer might make enough of a difference that your light won't come on, at least for a significant amount of time. So that's still an option. So we'll see in this specific example whether or not it works for us. I don't know. But again, I want to thank everyone so much for 1,000 subscribers on the channel, Once again, obviously I've said this in previous videos, but I really cannot thank everyone enough for that. It is crazy to me that we have more than double the amount of subscribers in this channel just in this past like 8 months of me doing videos weekly on a regular schedule, and I'm in the groove enough that I don't think that's gonna stop anytime soon. So I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by, for subscribing, and if you really enjoyed this video, please consider liking this video as well. That also really helps out with the old YouTube algorithm that everyone is definitely not sick of hearing about or anything. So stick around for more content on my Mustang as well as my other personal cars. More fun things are coming in the future, and I will see you guys all in the next one.